watercolor that you
liquid
guys use?
acrylic.
Liquid acrylics, right? And like how that applies to what you're trying to do as far as your goal goes. And like, I get what you're saying now, because like the reason I like using charcoals is because I like to understand the value and the light source before I even start messing with any colors and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like I always consider it like an underpainting kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like it's very, you know, tonal value, and that's about it. And but it's, you're able to create the same dynamics, and then that's when you would introduce like the intensities of color and contrast and such. You know what I mean? Or like a harmonious kind of color scheme, like a split complementary, like we've been working on for Monday Night's project and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like
absolutely.
So, yeah, I always like to try to approach it with the silhouette in mind.
Now, here's a good question. Something that I feel might be pretty relevant to, you know, just to kind of like getting a little bit further in depth with everything.
Okay.
When you're designing tattoos, when you're doing tattoos, when you're working on artwork, do you usually find that you try to put the most emphasis possible on contrast and value?
Yes, I always try to approach it with that in mind first.
Okay.
Well, I mean, with the tattoo especially, you know, like I want something that's going to last a long time in my tattoo work. Like I want it to, you know, I want to be able to see it 10 years later and it still hold up really well and not have spread or moved too much. You know what I mean? So like, I think we had a conversation earlier about like, you know, approaching it in the most traditional-esque kind of way, right? Where there is a lot of strong contrast and value, you know, simpler line work and stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely try to approach it that way for sure. But one of the things that I try to do in implementing that technique is the silhouette. Like I always try to imagine like the overall silhouette and how legible that shape is before I do anything else. Does that make sense? Like like a hand, if it was just to be black, like a dark background with a white hand or vice versa, you'd be able to see that there's fingers in the palm and the wrist there. You know what I mean? So like as simple as that. Like the turkeys that the little kids do, almost even.
Right.
You know.
But would you say that that's your primary focus, or would you say that that's more secondary to something such as, say, composition?
Oh yeah, well no, composition is definitely one of the more key things, right? Absolutely. Like you definitely start with the composition first. Agreed. The placement of subject matter, like if it's a secondary kind of influence or a third in the background kind of influence, and how it can kind of make it more cohesive with the overall piece. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you why I'm asking these questions. Because through talking to the various, you know, artists that I've met in my life, I find that if you really sit back and you really look at a lot of like their whole body of work, right?
Right.
You can generally tend to pick out maybe one or two elements that they will almost always try to focus on in every single one of their pieces that becomes their primary focal point, right?
Okay.
So for example, the illusion of depth and the creation of depth and the different depth tricks that are used to turn a flat two-dimensional plane into a three-dimensional window, right?
Right.
So, I mean, that's something that you see a lot of different artists going through and focusing on primarily. You'll see other artists that are out there that are focused more on what's the overall composition, right? No matter where it is it composed correctly? Does it have the right flow? Does it have the right fit? Is it moving with the body in a way that your body will manipulate the direction in which that tattoo moves on the body? You know, looking at color blends, there are some artists out there that focus almost solely on pure total color saturation, silky smooth color blends, and just total saturation of pigment, right? So, you know, you can see some artists out there focus primarily on line work.
Sorry, real quick, Bruno, could you turn your phone sideways?
There you go.
Bruno.
Hey, Bruno.
What up, Bruno?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Pretty good, man.
Good to see you all. How's it going, Gabe, Ricardo, Jason, Kiresten?
Hey.
Okay, awesome.
Just trying to figure out the camera thing. 1 second.
So, you know, that's getting back on topic, back onto my soapbox here for just another second to wrap up my point. You know, it's like you can almost pick things out. There are a lot of guys out there that'll focus on contrast, you know, and just maximizing that. But then